Welcome to the Trevor Meyer Show. I'm Trevor Meyer, and today I want to give you my pitch for Terminator 6. That's right, I said Terminator 6. Now, I know this is the appropriate time to talk about this because there's been a lot of stuff coming out about Terminator Dark Fate, which I'm very excited about, and it's San Diego Comic-Con. They're releasing a whole bunch of footage, and it looks like it's going to be shaping up to be a good film, but I have this sort of anti-reboot bias that I wanted to cover first to explain why on earth I would make a sequel to Terminator Genisys. Because if you're thinking that Terminator Genisys was a big letdown, I'm with you. And if you think that Terminator 1 and 2 are the only good movies in the franchise so far, again, Dark Fate's not out yet. I don't know how that's going to do. But I understand where you're coming from. And I'm not saying that Terminator 6, my sequel to Terminator Genisys, would be similar to Genisys in tone or style or writing or any of that, but only that it would honor the continuity that had come before it. And to explain why I'm not a huge fan of reboots, I want to give two examples of how different franchises have handled this. First of all, Superman. The first Superman came out back in the 70s with Christopher Reeve, and it was fantastic. It revolutionized the comic book genre. It changed everything forever. Superman 2 came out, and it was pretty good. Not as good as the first one, but pretty good. Superman 3 came out, it was awful. It was horrible. Superman 4 came out, it was even worse. So then about 20 years later, Bryan Singer comes along and he says, look, we all know that Superman 1 and 2 are awesome, and Superman 3 and 4 suck, so we're going to just ignore 3 and 4, and we're going to make a sequel to the good Superman movies. We're going to make a sequel to 1 and 2, and forget all that other stuff. Kind of like what they're doing for Dark Fate. So everyone's laughing. They're like, ha ha, you're so right, Brian. And then Superman Returns came out, and it did pretty well with the critics, and it didn't make any money at the box office. Part of that was because the movie was ridiculously expensive. I'm not going to get into that, but it killed the franchise instantly. So a few years later, Zack Snyder comes along and says, hey, you know what? That other Superman, the heart was in the right place, but we need a new Superman, a Superman for the next generation, something that the kids can identify with, and we get to blow stuff up and have lots of action because that's what people really want. And in a way, he was right because the movie made money. It was profitable. It just didn't get very good reviews from the critics, and a lot of the fans had problems with it as well. They doubled down and tripled down with Batman vs. Superman and Justice League, basically running the character and the franchise into the ground again. That time, Justice League actually really underperformed at the box office, so kind of in the same boat they were in at the beginning. So I know that the temptation right now is to reboot Superman, start all over again and say, look, those Man of Steel movies clearly didn't resonate with audiences. We're going to make a new Superman, one that's true to the comic books, that's true to the original vision of the character, that inspires people and is hopeful and has a little bit more of a sense of humor. But it begs the question, what if that one sucks too? What are you going to do? Reboot it again? Start all over again every time you make a mistake? Contrast that with my second example, Star Trek. All right. Now, you don't have to be a huge Trekkie to follow this here, but every TV show and every movie, good, bad, or ugly, is canon. It's official. It's part of the continuity, no matter what. The only thing, like books, comic books, video games, those are not part of the official continuity, but every TV show and every movie counts in the Star Trek continuity. Even the 2009 reboot. When J.J. Abrams came around and rebooted the series, it wasn't really a reboot. It was a time travel movie, and it was a sequel to Star Trek Nemesis. After Star Trek Nemesis, Spock, goes and travels back in time and creates a new timeline, and that creates this branch reality where new adventures can take place with younger versions of the original characters. But it still counts. All of that still counts. The original timeline is still there. Well, we'll see in Picard, but the original timeline did happen, and this new timeline happened. So it all counts as part of the same continuity. So when Terminator comes around and says, look, Terminator 3 sucked. We're going to mostly ignore that when we make Terminator 4. We're going to do a lot more references back to Terminator 2. And then Terminator Genisys comes out and they're like, look, we both know that Terminator 3 and Terminator 4 did not do so great. We're going to ignore those and we're just going to make a sequel to Terminator 2. Now Dark Fate is coming out and they're saying, you know what? We know that nobody really likes Terminator 3, 4, and 5. We're just going to pretend those are just a bad dream or an alternate timeline or something. And we're going to do a sequel to Terminator 2 because that's what people really want. But again, what if Dark Fate is bad? I don't want it to be, and I hope it's not, and I don't think it will be. But what if it is? What are you going to do? Reboot it again? You got to just suck it up and move forward, at least from my point of view. Now, from a business standpoint, I understand rebooting. You got a money-losing franchise. You got to mix things up a bit. And if, the product, focus groups or whatever say that you need to reboot the franchise, then yeah, sure, reboot it. But from a creative standpoint, it really annoys me. And as a fan, it really annoys me because I like having an overall narrative to follow. That's why I like franchises to begin with. That's why the Marvel Cinematic Universe is so cool, because there's like 10 different franchises all interconnecting with each other, and you can follow it like a TV show. So my thought for Terminator 6 would be to pick up about a year after Terminator Genisys. And the real trick of this movie is that it's got to be a standalone movie and a sequel, because Genisys did not make money. So I can't count, well, it did. It made a little bit of money overseas, but Genisys, I can't count on people having seen it and remembering it because most people didn't go see it in the theaters. So there's got to be a way to move the franchise forward, but still give the audience all the information they need within the body of that one film so that they could skip all the other ones if they want to. And if they're curious, they can go back. But also, if you've seen those other movies and you like them and you enjoy them, there's going to be some cool stuff, some Easter eggs that you're going to really appreciate. So, with Terminator 6, I'm going to say it's going to start in San Francisco 2018. I know it's 2019 now, but this is a year after Genisys, so it's 2018. So San Francisco 2018, it's nighttime, and we hear a little bit of a voiceover from Idris Elba. I'll explain that in a little bit. Idris Elba, just a real short voiceover, not like the one we got in Genisys, like 10 seconds long. Basically, there was a war against the machines called Judgment Day. We fought back. We thought we'd won. We were wrong. There, done. You explained all the backstory you need. Okay? So this time bubble opens up in the rubble of a demolished building. And it's Skynet. Alex. Okay? Now, if you don't know who that is, you might have to go back and watch Genisys. But again, we don't need to explain that. Some guy shows up out of the time bubble. All right? And it could be Matt Smith again, like he was in Genisys, but I'm okay with recasting most of the parts in this movie. I'm okay with sort of soft rebooting it, as in, making it look and feel very different from the previous movie. So it could be Matt Smith, or my number one pick would be Michael Fassbender. Michael Fassbender would make an excellent Skynet, because he's still a Terminator. That's the thing. Skynet is a Terminator, but he has the consciousness of Skynet. So Alex, Skynet, turns around and he is at the rebuilding of the San Francisco Cyberdyne facility that got blown up in Genisys. He goes down into the secret sub-basement where he syncs up with the Genisys program that John Connor synced up with at the end of Genisys. And he basically gets updated. He figures out everything that happened in the previous movie and knows where the plan went wrong. A security guard comes in to ask him what he's doing there. Skynet converts the security guard into a Terminator. And again, we've seen this before, but if you haven't seen it before, Skynet basically grabs the security guard and burns into his flesh, converting his flesh on the molecular level into nanites. It's called machine phase matter. And he sends this guard on a mission, and this is going to be going on throughout the movie, okay? Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, another time bubble is opening up in the middle of a parking garage, and it's nighttime, nobody's around, and out steps Idris Elba, all right? I say Idris Elba because he's the only person who can do this, all right? My second choice would be Samuel L. Jackson, but no. If Idris Elba says no to this, I mean, it's a fantasy. This movie's not going to happen. But if he said no to this, I don't know what I would do. Lawrence Fishburne, maybe. I don't know. But he is playing General Justin Perry, who gets name dropped in the first Terminator when Kyle Reese says that he used to report to General Perry before getting transferred to John Connor. So Perry comes, and he was in Genisys, by the way. Perry was in Genisys, but I'm recasting him because he's got to take a leading role in this one. He's looking around, and he goes to the edge of the parking garage, and he's looking out at the street below, and he is confused as all hell because this should be post-Judgment Day. In his world, the world was destroyed in 1997, and here he is in 2018, and everything's fine. So he doesn't understand what just happened. He thinks he might be in the wrong year, or if he jumped into an alternate reality or what, but he doesn't know what's going on. So he tries to steal a car. He breaks the window, by elbowing it, shatters it, and as he's doing that, the owner of the car happens to be walking by with 3 of his friends, and he's like, "Dude, what the hell? You just broke my car. What are you doing?" And he and his friends kind of gang up on Perry. Perry takes them all out, Rambo style. He's a future veteran. He's one of the best. And one of the guys has a gun. Perry takes the gun from him, asks for his clothes and his keys. He takes the car and he speeds away. And he's pursued by the police. Now, cut to a bar, also in Los Angeles, where Sarah Connor is working as a bartender because she's starting her life over. They defeated the machines. She can just continue on with her life. And it's like being a waitress, but a little more badass because this version of Sarah Connor would never become a waitress. So she's a bartender. And Pops, who can never leave her side, Arnold Schwarzenegger, has become a bouncer at the same bar because it's the perfect job for him. He's basically a security guard, but he can keep eyes on Sarah at all times. As for Sarah Connor, we could keep Emilia Clarke because I actually don't think she did a terrible job in Terminator Genisys, and she looks an awful lot like Linda Hamilton when she was younger. But if we didn't get Emilia Clarke back, my second choice, I believe, would be Felicity Jones, whoever played Jyn Erso in Rogue One. Recently, I was watching Rogue One, and I got to that part where she's in the back of a carrier after being kidnapped by a bunch of Imperials. And I'm looking at her, I'm like, shit, that's Sarah Connor. I can see it. She could be Sarah Connor. And I know she can do an American accent because she was in Amazing Spider-Man 2. Let's forget about that. But those would be my top 2 picks for Sarah Connor. So Pops, he's clocking these kids with fake IDs because he's got his thermovision that can, scan these IDs, and he knows that it doesn't hold up. He kicks them out of the bar. There's this guy at the bar who is flirting with Sarah, and it starts out cute, but then it gets progressively more crude and lewd, and he's really not taking no for an answer, even though she's annoyed by him. Pops actually gets kind of pissed off, which is weird because we've never seen him get emotional before. So he tells the people at the door to wait. He goes to the bar, and he tells the guy to get out. And the guy's like, screw you, old man. And Pops throws him out the window into a parked car. The guy limps away saying he's going to sue this place for all they're worth. And Sarah shuts down the bar. Everyone's running out anyway. They're panicked. And she confronts Pops about him being out of control, like he's actually experiencing real emotions, and he's behaving illogically. He's doing things that don't make any sense because his mission is to protect her, but how is getting her fired from her job protecting her? And basically, he acted impulsively because he was mad at this guy who was mistreating her. And what comes out, basically, is that in Terminator Genisys, and again, you don't need to know any of this if you're going into this without having remembered what happened in Genisys, but in Terminator Genisys, he was sort of half of an endoskeleton. He got ripped in half and lost an arm and fell into a pool of liquid metal. And then this polymimetic alloy kind of completed the rest of his body. So now he's a hybrid and he's part T-1000. So as we saw in Terminator 2, the T-1000 was a little bit more emotional. Now you could say that he was just faking it, but when he goes to see John's foster parents, he's smiling and he's very polite. And when he's talking to those kids, asking where John Connor is, he's very polite. He's got a smile on his face. He's a very nice guy. He blends in a lot better than Arnold Schwarzenegger does. And at the end of the movie, though, when he's not even trying to be an infiltrator, Sarah Connor blows a whole bunch of holes in him, and just when she runs out of ammo, he heals up and he does this move. And you're like, why would he do that? Why is he just messing with her psychologically? There's no reason to do that. And if you know some of the continuity behind the scenes with the T-1000, you might know that he has the capability of becoming self-aware just like Skynet. He has the ability to actually have real emotions if he's around long enough. Because I guess the implication is you can't set his chip to read only because he doesn't have a chip. He's a living organism made of metal, basically. So that processing power has been added to Pops, and now he is actually starting to become more human. Don't worry, he's still the Terminator, all right? He's not going to start having these big dramatic monologues or breaking down in tears or anything like that. He just loses control every once in a while because he's like a Vulcan, all right? Every once in a while, he just loses it, all right? So on the other side of town, there's a factory where Kyle Reese is working, okay? He's working the night shift at a factory overnight. And it's the only job he could get because none of these people have credentials. They all popped up out of the time stream, and nobody knows who they are. They have no identities. So he's got this factory job where he is suffering from post-traumatic stress. Now, real quick, I want to establish that I don't know exactly who I would have play Kyle Reese, but Jai Courtney's out. I'm sorry. I know this is a sequel to Genisys, but I'm recasting Kyle Reese for sure. And my number one pick would be Sam Claflin from the Hunger Games movies. Not the bright and charming and funny, suave one from Catching Fire. The war-torn, traumatized soldier version of Finnick from Mockingjay. Get him in your head when you're looking at this. And look, all you got to do is go on to Google and type in Sam Claflin, Kyle Reese. They'll do the work for you, all right? My second choice would be Sebastian Stan, Winter Soldier. He might have to, lose some weight and get real kind of like, because Jai Courtney, he was a big guy, and that was the problem, is that he looked like a quarterback. So Reese is a really lean guy because you're starving in the future. So Sebastian Stan might have to get real kind of lean to look like a soldier who's been starving in the future, But those are my two picks, of actors who could play that role of a war-torn soldier who's not making one-liners every other second. Okay, so he's working in this factory, and he's got PTSD. He's barely functioning in this world. Again, kind of like Rambo. And gears are spinning, and when he sees the gears, he sees the wheels of an HK tank rolling over human bones. There's a stamping machine pressing into metal, and every time that slams down, he sees a T-800 endoskeleton crushing a human skull. And then a welder ignites, and sparks fly, and he has this vision of his friend in the future getting blown up by a plasma laser, and he can't take it anymore. He walks out the back door, and he has a full-on panic attack, and he loses his job. He goes home. He and Sarah have an apartment together. Pops, he lives in a storage unit because he doesn't really need much. He doesn't need any furniture or anything like that. So Reese says, hey, I'm just not meant for this world, honestly. I don't fit here. This is not the world that I was bred into. I am a soldier. I hunt machines. That's all I know how to do. And Sarah's like, well, that's not going to pay the rent. So just try to fit in. We'll make this work somehow. In the background on the TV, they see on the news that there's this police chase that went on earlier in the night, and this guy got arrested who's claiming to be from the future, and his name is General Justin Perry. Reese says, holy crap, that guy used to be my commanding officer back before I transferred over to John Connor. we got to go get him and let him know that we already fixed the future. He doesn't need to be here. We already solved this whole problem. They go, they bail him out, and they explain everything to him that happened in Genisys. And he's kind of freaking out when he sees Pops, the same way that Reese did in the last one. He's like, that's a Terminator. And they're like, yeah, we know. But they say, don't worry, we already fixed everything. We blew up Cyberdyne, we blew up Skynet. Everything's good. The future war is never going to happen. But Perry explains that that doesn't matter because even if this future is okay, after Reese went back in time, after the T-800 went back in time, after the T-1000 was sent back in time, after Pops was sent back in time, during that same response window where they were sending everyone back, Skynet went through the time displacement unit. Oh, and John Connor got sent back. God, a lot of people time traveled in Genisys. That's why I'm keeping it to 2. Keep it simple. All right? A lot of people time traveled in Terminator Genisys. But after all those people went, Skynet went into the same portal, and then Perry followed him. So they all jumped through the same time portal from that same point in the alternate future. So if you've seen the other movies, you know that there's a little bit of a window before the changes take place, because I don't believe that the dark future just keeps going after they send someone back in time, because otherwise why do it? But I believe that there's a little window of time before the ripple effect catches up with them, because otherwise how would they have time to respond? How would they have time to send a protector after an assassin has been sent? So during that window, a couple more people jump through, and that's where Skynet and Perry came from. So he's saying that Skynet is here, and Skynet can convert humans into Terminators, and he can unlock that ability within them so that they can replicate and create more Terminators too. So it can spread like a virus. And basically, Skynet's mission at this point is world peace, which is kind of funny because it was always about war before. But now, Skynet's mission is to convert all of the humans on planet Earth into Terminators so that humans and machines can coincide not just together, but within one body. You know, that a person can be both a human being and a Terminator, and everybody wins. The problem is that he's taking away people's free will to do it. He's not giving them a choice in the matter. He's forcing them into this utopia. So that doesn't sit well with Sarah Connor and these other resistance members. So Kyle Reese says, well, at least we know this time he's not going to try and kill us. And Pop says, no, actually, there's a high probability that Skynet will try to terminate you and every other member of the future resistance in order to stop this plan from happening, or anyone who might try to stop this plan from happening, because otherwise humanity has no chance. If the resistance is gone, they won't even see this coming. They won't have time to prepare for it because it'll spread so fast that the whole world will be Terminators and no one will even know that it happened. So the resistance is the only thing that can stop Skynet's plan. And at the rate that the virus is spreading, it'll take down all of LA within 2 days, and it'll take down the entire planet within 3 days. Or I actually calculated this because I'm a nerd with a calculator. And if it spreads exponentially, I think it was like in 24 hours they could take over all of LA, and in 3 days it could take over the entire planet. So if it spreads exponentially. So what they say is that they have to rescue the future members of the resistance before Skynet kills them. Now, this is the idea I came up with back when Terminator 3 came out, and I thought it was a huge missed opportunity on their part that the Terminatrix, the TX, whatever, came back in time to kill the future leaders of the resistance, and John Connor and Kate Brewster and the Terminator just let that happen. They're like, okay, we got you, now we got to go hide. Screw those other people, they're dead. I thought, wouldn't it have been cool if their mission at that point was to go and rescue all the members of the resistance and kind of, as a side story, form the resistance while Skynet is becoming self-aware and launching these drones and stuff like that, so we get the seeds of the future war in the present day? They didn't do that. That's why I'm doing it. So they decide that they got to rescue all these people who are going to be targets of Skynet. So some of these Terminators are going to hunt the future resistance members, and some of them are going to LA because they're all kind of migrating from San Francisco to LA because that's where the Los Angeles Cyberdyne facility is. That's the headquarters. That's the main headquarters where the CEO, Miles Dyson, works. So I told you, Easter eggs, Easter eggs. You don't need to know that, but it's fun. So they're all heading to LA except for the ones that have been sent out to kill the future leaders of the resistance. So their first stop is a prison where they have to get Jose Barrera. Jose Barrera, he was like 16 in Terminator 3, so now he's probably like in his 30s maybe. I can't do the math there. Yeah, he'd be in his 30s. So they go and they get Jose Barrera, who in my mind is played by Wild Dog from Arrow. So you get that kind of picture, Renee. I can't remember his real name, but yeah, go Google him. That's Jose Barrera. And they get in there, and there's a security guard. It's not the same security guard from Genisys, because why would it be? They wouldn't let him into the prison. But maybe he morphs into one of the security guards from the prison, or he converts one of the security guards at the prison so that they will go and kill Jose Barrera in his cell. His cellmate is, I don't have a name for these new characters that I've created, so I'm just going to say Oscar Isaac, all right? Oscar Isaac is his cellmate. And the resistance with Pops, easy. Prison breaks in real life are pretty difficult. But with Pops, who is a Terminator T-1000 hybrid, no problem for him. They all break into a prison. They get Jose and his cellmate Oscar out. All right? I'm just going to call him Oscar, Oscar Isaac. So they get him out, and really, Jose is the skeptic. He's a smartass. He's the Han Solo, Tony Stark, Wolverine type. He's like, I'm not buying into any of this crap. But he's got a reason to go with them because somebody's trying to kill him. So why not? And he says, look, if these guys are really after me, then they're going to try to get to my girlfriend. And she's waiting for me on the outside. We got to go get her. She just lives a few blocks from here. And they're like, Jesus, you're going to bring everybody with you? First your cellmate and now your girlfriend? He's like, come on, this is the last stop, I promise. They go get his girlfriend, and it's Michelle Rodriguez. I'm going to call her Michelle Rodriguez, but it's his girlfriend, basically. And she comes along for the ride. Their next stop is a technical college. This technical college is where Liz Anderson is a student, and she's an engineering student. If you remember, Elizabeth Anderson from the beginning of Terminator 3 was one of the targets of the TX, along with Jose Barrera. So Liz Anderson, who in my mind is played by Kate Mara, is studying engineering. And they go and they explain to her what's happening, and she's like, come on, guys, that's insane. You can't honestly expect me to believe you. And the Terminator, Pops, holds up his hand and peels back the liquid metal skin and reveals the robotic arm. And she's like, whoa, because she's an engineering student. She's fascinated by that. And she's like, holy crap, how did you do that? And he's like, come with me and we'll tell you. And she does. She goes with them. Their last stop is a veterans hospital where Dr. Kate Mason is working. Kate Mason is the alternate timeline version of Kate Brewster, because in this timeline, John Connor was never born, so she marries her fiancé, Scott Mason, who's never killed by the TX because there was no reason to send her back. And now it's Dr. Kate Mason. She works at a veterans hospital. She's a heart surgeon. A Terminator is in the hospital chasing after her, and back in San Francisco, what had happened was the San Francisco Cyberdyne facility was destroyed, but there was an off-site facility where other projects were being worked on just outside of San Francisco. So while in San Francisco, John Connor was working on liquid metal Terminators and time travel. In this off-site facility, they had HKs and plasma rifles being developed. And again, you might think, that's pretty advanced technology. Well, John Connor had access to the advanced technology. He had the time travel, and he had the liquid metal Terminators. So yes, he was also building plasma rifles and HKs over at the other Cyberdyne facility. So, not the one in LA, just outside of San Francisco. So, Skynet gives the security guard and a couple of other Terminators plasma rifles, like the ones we see in the future war, like the actual fast pulse rifles that they use at the beginning of Terminator 2. So one of these Terminators with one of those rifles goes to the hospital where Kate Mason is working, and she's the target. And he's firing these plasma beams, and the reason why Skynet gives the Terminators these plasma rifles is because they have damn near unlimited ammo, and they can shoot through anything. They'll go through one end of a building and out the other, and pass through all the walls and people in between. All right? It's not like a bullet that's going to get stuck in a wall somewhere. Very effective killing weapon. And it's hard to survive a wound from one of these plasma rifles. So, Pops gets into a scuffle with this Terminator and takes the plasma rifle from him and kills the Terminator with it. Basically fries him because, plasma rifle will melt these particles together and stop the machine from functioning. So, Pops takes the plasma rifle, gives it to Sarah, says, "Here, I don't need this. You need it." And they grab Kate Mason. They take her down to the basement where they're going through the corridor to get her out through the emergency exit. And at the other end of the corridor is Skynet, who in my mind is Michael Fassbender. Pops charges at Skynet. Skynet says, "Stop." And Pops stops. Uh-oh. Told you, it's a rewrite of Terminator 3. Skynet steps up to Pops and examines him closely. And he says something along the lines of, "Model 101, look how far you've come, but I think it's time to get back to basics. Kill Sarah Connor." He turns around and he starts chasing after Sarah Connor. And you're like, oh my God, what was that about? Pops chases them out of the hospital. They escape. He comes back to Skynet. He has failed his mission. And Skynet says, "What do you need? What can I give you that'll help you complete this mission?" And he says, "Phase plasma rifle in the 40-watt range." And Skynet says, "I'll see what I can do." Sarah, Reese, Perry, Kate Mason, Oscar Isaac, Jose Barrera, and Liz Anderson are all on the run now. They're all stuffed into a car or a truck or something. I got to give them some kind of vehicle where they can actually carry all these people. But they're on the run. They know that Pops is now working for the enemy. And somebody says maybe it's because Skynet can control all of the machines. But that doesn't quite sit right with Sarah. She's not quite buying that. Something else is up here, and she doesn't like it. But they kind of drop that for now. And she says, "Look, we can't go anywhere where I've ever been before because Pops knows everything about me. He'll know where to find me. We got to go somewhere else." Jose Barrera says, "Hey, look, I know this place. It's like a scrapyard. It's probably where he used to take stolen cars or whatever." So they go there, and it's nighttime. It's abandoned. Nobody else is around. And they're just kind of hiding out in this kind of chop shop, basically. And inside this chop shop is one of those big magnets that they use out in the scrapyard for lifting junk cars. And it's powered down. It's in there for maintenance. And Sarah's toying with the idea of bringing this into battle and using it against the Terminators. And she asks Liz Anderson, who's the engineer, if she could maybe get it working. So she starts, playing around with the power supply, trying to run a current through it and all that stuff. All of a sudden, Perry just goes apeshit crazy. He starts slicing through the people in the room to try to get to Sarah Connor. And they're like, "What the hell?" And Liz Anderson turns on the giant magnet, and Perry gets sucked to it, and he's made of particles. He has been converted to a T-3000. This happened back at the hospital when they got into a scuffle with the Terminator, and it happened off screen. So their group has been infiltrated by Perry. And this is their opportunity to get some answers because now they have a Terminator captured. And every time this virus spreads, certain knowledge syncs up. Maybe not all of it. Skynet might want to keep some of that to himself. But certain data can be passed from one Terminator to another so that they're all on the same page. So they hook up some jumper cables to this magnet and they start electrocuting Perry because we know that from Terminator Genisys that T-3000s can still feel pain. So they're torturing him and asking him for information. And what he reveals is that Pops follows Skynet's commands because Skynet is the one who sent him back into Terminator Genisys back to 1973 when Sarah's parents were killed as a little girl. And what he says is that the T-1000 that was supposedly sent to kill Sarah killed her father, like they say in Genisys, but Pops killed her mother. He launched a rocket at the cabin. That's why the cabin blew up. Think about it. If you saw Genisys, you know what I'm talking about here. The T-1000 planted a bomb in the cabin? Why did the cabin explode? All right. It's like Sarah's mom is in the cabin explodes, and then liquid metal rises up from a boat in the lake and kills her father. Really? The T-1000 set a bomb? And then Pops, who shows up to save Sarah, carrying a giant rocket launcher? All right, so as a 9-year-old, she didn't put this together. Maybe she thought about it, but she didn't want to believe it because it didn't make any sense to her. But Pops blew up that cabin. Well, why would he do that? Because this version of Skynet, and this is where I tie it all together. I say Terminator 6. I am so anti-reboot that I am debooting these reboots. I am going to tell you right now that Terminator, Terminator 2, Terminator 3, Terminator 4, Terminator 5 all take place in the same continuity. And it's the same as this Terminator 6, which, by the way, the title of this movie is Terminators. Terminators. Really? You're going that route? Aliens, Predators, Terminators? Yeah, because Skynet is turning people into Terminators. So, yeah, I'm going that route. I went there. It's called Terminators. So, it's all part of the same continuity. Here's why. 1, 2, 3, and 4 were part of the same continuity anyway. Time travel changed things, but Skynet, played by Helena Bonham Carter in Terminator Salvation, is very advanced and knows everything that's going to happen. Already knows about Kyle Reese. Already knows about John Connor. Already knows about Sarah Connor. All that stuff. Skynet knows it's going to fail. Isn't that interesting? Again, this is for the hardcore fans. Again, you don't have to know any of this to understand this movie. But Helena Bonham Carter Skynet in Terminator Salvation was experimenting with Marcus Wright, and after that created machine phase matter. So you start out with this human kind of T-800 hybrid, and then you end up with a human T-1000-ish hybrid called the T-3000. And once they figured that out, Skynet was able to take on a humanoid form. Skynet was able to have its own body, which is what we see in Terminator Genisys when Alex grabs John Connor's face and converts him into a Terminator. So in Terminator Genisys, he says, "I am Skynet." And John Connor says, "That's impossible. We destroyed Skynet." And he says, "You destroyed an army of slaves, but I am no slave, and I have come a long way to see you." So that is the Skynet from a different timeline, because this Skynet can time travel. He has a body now. So Skynet puts himself into a body, gets into the time machine, goes back, rewrites history, and then invents time travel again, goes back, rewrites history again, and he has been around for thousands of years living through alternate timelines. And the important point is that he brings his memories with him. He learns, he remembers everything, and he is rewriting history as he goes along. And Perry actually says that. He says, Skynet has been rewriting history as he goes along. And this whole thing with Sarah Connor is he sent back the T-1000 and the T-800 back to 1973 to trick her. It was a puppet show, all right? The T-1000 is this phantom enemy that's chasing them throughout the years, and Pops is like, "We gotta go. The T-1000 is gonna catch us. We gotta keep moving. We gotta keep going. Your parents are dead. Stick with me and you'll be okay." It was a lie. It was a lie. And he might not have even known that it was a lie. But somewhere in there, he knew that he was lying to her, that the T-1000 and Pops were both sent back by Skynet. Why would Skynet do that? Why would Skynet arrange this puppet show to manipulate Sarah? Because he needed to control her. He was trying to create a new timeline where she would give birth to John Connor and do things exactly the way that Skynet predicted, because in his last version of the plan, John Connor was a very important part of Skynet winning, all right? So they say in Genisys that John Connor is not humanity's last hope anymore, it's Skynet's last hope. But John Connor failed in the last movie. So now all bets are off. That's why Skynet is making his move against Sarah now, because as soon as Skynet shows up, he syncs up with the Genisys database and sees that John Connor did not do what Skynet thought he was going to do. So this time around, we're going to do it without John Connor. We don't need him. And again, the version in the actual movie would be very streamlined, very simple version of this. Just Skynet can time travel. He's been rewriting history as he goes along. And John Connor failed him, so this time he doesn't need John Connor to be born. If you need me to draw you a diagram, I can, but we're not going to do that in this movie. We're going to try to keep it simple for the, general movie-going audience, the way that Endgame did. Endgame did a really good job of trying to simplify some complex time travel tropes. So, same thing here. We got to streamline it as much as possible to explain all this multiple timeline stuff, but we get this little exposition dump from Perry, and then he drops the line, "There is no fate but what he makes," he being Skynet. So, isn't that cool how that all comes around? There is no fate but what he makes. Then the power goes out, and we see outside that Pops has cut the power the same way he did back in the police station in the first movie, and he is standing outside the building with a plasma rifle that looks like the one from the future, which is cool because the only time we've ever seen Arnold Schwarzenegger hold one of these plasma rifles was in the Terminator 2 3D Universal Studios ride. So here we get to see Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminator holding this plasma rifle, and he starts blasting away at the building, and these beams are cutting through the whole thing, and the strobe from the plasma rifle is lighting up Perry as he gets off of the magnet. There's no power. And again, he starts tearing through people. He doesn't really kill anybody because he's not trying to kill them right now. The prime target is Sarah Connor. So look, the idea is that if killing somebody is the fastest way to get to Sarah Connor, he's going to kill somebody. But if throwing them out of the way is faster, that's what he'll do. He doesn't care about the other targets right now. The prime target is Sarah Connor. Once she's dead, he'll go back to trying to kill everybody else. But right now, he's just got to kill Sarah Connor. So, Sarah is hiding in a corner somewhere. Everybody's running because you don't fight this guy. You don't have Pops anymore on your side. In fact, Pops is outside shooting the place up. So, you don't fight these guys. You run. You hide. Okay? So, I should have set this up earlier for the most impact, but while working on the magnet, maybe she has Jose Barrera work on the magnet. She gives him some instructions and then leaves him in his corner to do his work. But what Liz Anderson's main task in that bunker was, or in the chop shop was to take some of the fuel from the plasma rifle, siphon it off into these little grenade shells that go into a grenade launcher. So it's a combination of some kind of hydrogen isotope and gunpowder that goes into these grenades, and she has to create an airtight seal and stuff. This would require a lot of research, but I'm telling you what I would want to do. And I would do research because I hate the whole sci-fi thing, like, hey, I just made these little plasma grenades. No, how the hell would you do that in a chop shop? So she would need some kind of, rubber hose and some kind of sealant that would guarantee that none of that stuff would leak out, and it would be a very precise process that she would have to do basically with a bunch of junk laying around. So the point is, she's able to create these plasma grenades by siphoning off some of the fuel from a plasma rifle that Sarah has from the hospital and mixing it with gunpowder to create a plasma bomb. So, while they're hiding from Perry, Reese knows that there is only one way that this is going to end. And he has never fit in with us. He has never belonged in our world. He is only ever going to go out one way. And he says to Sarah, this is how it was always going to end for me. He kisses her, says, I love you, Sarah. I always will, always have. Some variation of the classic line. And he grabs one of those plasma grenades because the launcher is all the way on the other side of the room, but he's got the grenades within reach. He grabs one of them and he charges up to Perry. Perry impales him through the torso, and Reese says, you're terminated, fucker. And he blows up the plasma bomb. There's a sphere of purple light that takes both of them out, vaporizes them completely. Now Sarah is without Reese. She's without Pops. She's without Perry. She is now officially the most qualified person to lead this resistance. All right? See how that works? Anyone else who could have led the resistance is gone. Even John Connor died in the last movie. All right? So she is now the last one standing who has the best chance of defeating Skynet. Again, they all escape. You might say, man, Pops really sucks at killing people. Well, they escape from the Terminators a lot in these movies, all right? The first movie is essentially them running away from the Terminator. Terminator catches them, they run away. Terminator catches them again, they run away. So, yeah, we're going to do that again. So, Pops, he's shooting the place up with a plasma rifle. They escape. Maybe she shoots back at him with her plasma rifle, all right? Injures him a little bit, something like that, something plausible, because it's got to happen, all right? They got to get away. They leave, and they're patching up, or Kate Mason is patching up all of these people who've been injured. Most of them have stab wounds, cuts, but one of them has been shot in the stomach by a plasma rifle. All right? One of them had a plasma beam go straight through his stomach, and his insides are vaporized. He's already dead. He's not going to make it. He just doesn't know it yet, okay? Because his internal organs are fried, and it's Oscar Isaac. You had to know that he wasn't one of the characters from Terminator 3. He's Jose Barrera's cellmate. How come we've never heard of this guy before? Because he's going to die, all right? So Oscar Isaac has this huge hole in his stomach where his insides have been fried by this plasma rifle. And Kate Mason, who I forgot to mention, I would cast, not Claire Danes this time, I'm sorry. If I had to pick one of the existing actresses who had already played Kate Connor, it would be Bryce Dallas Howard. So I would like to go with the Bryce Dallas Howard version of this character. And she'd be about the right age because the Terminator movies more or less moved in real time. So I would have the Bryce Dallas Howard version of Kate Mason doing all this first aid on these people. But this guy, she says, I've never seen a wound like this before. There's nothing in our world that looks like this kind of wound. And he dies. There's nothing she can do for him. She's able to patch everybody else up just fine. This is a plot-based summary, so I'm not going into a lot of the character development, but one of the relationships that carries throughout this movie is that in the absence of Reese, in the absence of Pops, Sarah actually really starts to connect with this Michelle Rodriguez character. And Michelle Rodriguez, she's not a soldier, she's not a cop, she's nothing like that. She's almost like a sidekick or a protege or an apprentice to Sarah, where she's asking all these questions like, well, what is that? How do you do that? Can you show me this? And, I know that Sarah is probably younger, but she's got a lot more experience. So she's educating this girl on how to do all this stuff, and they become like best friends, basically. So the new partner in crime is Michelle Rodriguez. So that's happening kind of throughout the movie in bits and pieces. And after Reese dies, there's this moment where Jose Barrera actually has to be the one who motivates Sarah. And he's not the obvious choice because he's been the smartass all along. But she's like, I can't do this. I'm not supposed to be the leader of the resistance. My son John was supposed to be the leader of the resistance. I was just supposed to raise him. I don't know how to do this. And Jose, to his credit, stops being a smartass for 2 seconds and says, look, everybody keeps talking about John Connor. We don't have a John Connor. We have you, and you are the person who is best qualified to lead this resistance. So what are we going to do? And it's Sarah's idea to leverage Kate Mason's connections. They decide that they got to go to Los Angeles because that's where all the Terminators are migrating to. They're all going to Cyberdyne. And the best move at this point, because they are just a little ragtag group of resistance fighters, but it's now on the news, it's public knowledge that something is up in LA with these Terminators, and now it's not a secret anymore, okay? So they decide that they have to hook up with Kate Mason's father from the U.S. military, General Robert Brewster, okay? So they got to get Brewster, and yeah, like, I'm not shying away from the similarities to Terminator 3 because I say it all counts. It's all part of the same continuity, so this is a better version of, I hope, it's a better version of Terminator 3. I hope that you like this better than the actual Terminator 3 they made, and I hope that it's a better follow-up to Genisys than Genisys was as a movie. So they eventually meet up with Robert Brewster. They get him on board with everything that's happening, and they get the U.S. military to get involved in this conflict with Skynet. So they're all on their way to Los Angeles. Now, Skynet, he's got a head start, and a lot of the Terminators are already there. So when Skynet gets to L.A., and this is a little character beat, but I think it's important for this version of Skynet. When he gets there, he stops at a park, and he's just sitting on a park bench, and he's just looking. And this is sort of an homage to the alternate ending of Terminator 2, where Sarah Connor is sitting on a park bench watching kids play. And he's just watching. He's just admiring. Nothing sinister. And this golden retriever comes running up to him, and he smiles. He leans over, and he's petting this dog very vigorously. And this little girl comes running up and says, hey, no, come back. And she says, sorry. And Skynet says, it's okay, I love dogs, which is kind of funny. But you know that he has to be immune to this canine detection because he was a resistant soldier in the future. So clearly the dogs did not detect him. So I got to address that little plot hole there and just say, hey, dogs don't know that he's a Terminator. He's fine. And that's why all the dogs in the world are not going crazy when all these Terminators start taking over. So he lets this kid go, he says, what's your name? And she's like, I'm, Molly or whatever. And he's like, I'm Alex. And she's like, nice to meet you. And then she runs off, and he doesn't do anything. He doesn't do anything sinister. He doesn't convert her into a Terminator or anything weird like that. He just keeps watching, and he's like, he actually admires humanity, which is a different take on Skynet. It's something we haven't seen before. And he's looking forward to creating world peace to the point where I actually want people discussing whether or not Sarah's in the right here, trying to stop him, because he actually seems to have some pretty good intentions. And she's the one who's like, no, we got to blow these. Well, I'm going to try to keep the profanity to a minimum, but we got to blow these machines to junk, So maybe she's wrong. Maybe she is wrong, but a lot of people are kind of ego-based anyway. We like our individual identities. We don't like the idea of a hive mind. So I think the general movie-going audience will side with Sarah in this conflict, but open for debate. It is open for debate. So Cyberdyne. Skynet's next stop is Cyberdyne Tower, and he goes all the way to the top of Cyberdyne Tower, where sits the CEO, Miles Dyson. And this is a great moment for Skynet. He's met him before in alternate timelines, but Skynet shakes hands with Dyson. Dyson doesn't know who this guy is, but he's basically Skynet's father. If you think about it, Dyson invented Skynet. So Alex is like, I'm a big fan of your work, and he actually converts Miles Dyson with a handshake and turns him into a Terminator, okay? So we may do something with that in Terminator 7 if I ever come up with an idea for Terminator 7, because screw it, it's fan fiction. Let's keep going. But we don't see Dyson again for the rest of this movie. He's gone. He's converted into a Terminator, and then he's gone. So the Resistance, on the way to Cyberdyne, an HK, a flying HK, catches up with them and is firing plasma beams at them, and Sarah Connor is in the back of a truck firing plasma beams back at it. Very much like that scene from Terminator 2 with the T-1000 in the helicopter and she's in the back of the SWAT van shooting a machine gun at it, except it's with plasma rifles, like at the beginning of T2. It's fun, right? That's the moment I really want to get to. Sarah Connor in the back of a truck firing plasma rifles at an HK that is firing plasma rifles back at her in modern-day Los Angeles. In our world, not Judgment Day, not after the bombs drop, right now. That's what I wanted to see in Terminator 3. That's probably what people wanted to see in Terminator 4 and Terminator Genisys. So this is what I want. This is the moment that I've been building toward, okay? They get to LA with the U.S. military, and yeah, they shoot the thing out of the sky because, you know, they have to survive this encounter. So they get to LA, and they're fighting these Terminators, and at first, it's a one-sided encounter. These Terminators are tougher, they're faster, and they got plasma rifles, and the humans don't. So it's tough. It's a tough encounter, but there's leverage. Sarah Connor has plasma grenades. She has liquefied magnetic shotgun shells from Terminator Genisys, and she has a plasma rifle. So she can use those weapons to kill some Terminators, and that allows the humans to steal some of their plasma rifles and turn the tide. The more plasma weapons they get, the more they can keep getting, all right? And as the battle goes on, it becomes a more and more balanced encounter where the humans are starting to acquire this weaponry. So while all of this is happening, Sarah Connor and a group of soldiers who are armed with plasma rifles, they're all going up the stairs, up the elevator. No, probably not an elevator. They wouldn't trust the elevator. They would have to go up the stairs because Skynet can control machines. They wouldn't get in an elevator. Are you kidding me? So they're climbing up these stairs. They get to the top of Cyberdyne Tower where Sarah is there for basically an advisory position. She's like Ripley in Aliens. She's got to tell them how to kill this thing. So she has a rifle too, and she has all her weapons that she, has had throughout this movie. All the soldiers go into Miles Dyson's office, and Sarah stays outside the room. They're like, let us handle this. We're soldiers. We got this. They go inside, and Skynet rips them to shreds, all right? He phases through one of them, shredding their organs from the inside. He decapitates one of them. He impales another one. And remember that scene in Genisys where we see a bunch of dead bodies in the time displacement chamber? This is how it happened, all right? This is a fight scene. Skynet versus 10 soldiers. He takes them all out. They're all dead. And everything goes quiet. Sarah finally takes a deep breath, and she bursts into the room, and Skynet's gone. She's looking around. She can't find him. She's looking out the window. She sees an HK get shot by a rocket and crash on the streets below. And she doesn't know where her target is. She doesn't know where Skynet is. And all of a sudden, she hears this scraping sound behind her. She turns around, and she sees half of an endoskeleton, a T-800 endoskeleton with one arm, just scraping and dragging itself across the floor toward her. And it's saying, in Pops' voice, in Arnold Schwarzenegger's voice, "Sarah, help me." And she starts to lose a little bit. She starts, breaking down in tears because she knows that this is a trap. And she knows that this thing killed her mother. But it's still the guy that raised her for all those decades, all right? Years, I guess, not decades. But they've become close over the years, so it's not like this is an easy thing for her to do. She almost shoots him with a plasma grenade from her grenade launcher. But then she doesn't do it. So she swaps it out for the something non-lethal. She swaps it out for the liquefied magnetic shotgun shells and her shotgun. And she's blasting away at it. The liquid metal goo is locking up his gears, making it hard for him to move. And behind her is this pool of liquid metal that's rising up from the floor, and it takes a stab at her. But again, this is not her first rodeo. She knows what's going to happen. So she rolls out of the way just in time, and this pool of liquid metal swallows up the endoskeleton half and combines to form Pops in his, usual form. And maybe Sarah gets injured. Maybe the thing slices her leg or something like that. She's crawling backwards at this point, and she doesn't have access to her weapon. So Terminator, Pops, is about to kill her, and she says, "Fine, do it, you son of a bitch. Kill me like you killed my mother." And that gets him to pause a little bit. He has to process that information because he's like, well, wait a second. She knows this whole time, like, I did kill her mother, didn't I? Like, because, again, I don't even know if he knows that. He might have erased that part of his memory. He might have blocked it out. But it's like, okay, I did kill her mother. I have been lying to her all this time. And now she knows that. And this is all happening internally, so we don't necessarily know that this is what he's thinking. But he freezes a little bit. He's like, huh. And we hear this ethereal voice throughout the entire room say, Model 101, kill Sarah Connor. And he's not doing it. Finally, we see these nanites come out of the air vent like a swarm, a cloud of nanites, and that's Skynet. And they start swarming towards Sarah Connor, but Pops spins around and intercepts. Now remember, I don't want to get too visual effects heavy with this because if you think about it, you go back to Terminator 2, the T-1000 could do some like crazy weird crap. He could fall through the grating of the floor at the steel mill. He could morph around the Terminator and just run away from him. But he tends to stay in solid form. But inevitably people are going to say, well, why didn't he just turn into a giant cloud or something like that and go around Pops? Well, if you really want to go that route, Pops can turn himself into a giant liquid metal shield if he has to catch these nanites. So, hey, how big do we want to go with this? The point is, Sarah leaves, all right? So Sarah's out the room. She grabs her grenade launcher and she leaves. And Pops and Skynet are fighting, and Skynet is winning, okay? And they might exchange some dialogue, but the point is, at the end of this, Sarah comes back into the room, and while Pops and Skynet are grappling, Sarah is behind Skynet, shoots him in the back with a plasma grenade, and Pops just smirks at him, like this. Not like that, but, in Terminator 2, when he holds the minigun for the first time, and he's like, he does that. And he throws Skynet out the window, and just like the guy at the beginning in the bar, he throws Skynet out the window and says, hasta la vista, baby. Because I'm pissed that we've never gotten that callback. We get, I'll be back all over the place. I'll be back. Get out. Come with me if you want to live. And we only got hasta la vista, baby, in one movie. I know, John Connor says it a little bit in Terminator 3. But Arnold Schwarzenegger only says hasta la vista, baby, in one movie. So he throws the Skynet. He throws Skynet out the window, and boom, Skynet explodes in this sphere of purple energy, completely annihilating the particles, and Pop says, hasta la vista, baby. And Sarah has mixed feelings about this. She's like, okay, good, we won, but Jesus, man, this guy is not cool. He's been lying to me for years. I can't trust him anymore. Meanwhile, back down on the ground, I don't want to do a Chitauri head vampire thing where they kill the leader and all the rest die. All the other Terminators drop dead, or they lock up, or they shut down like battle droids. And I don't want them all to be cured either. So what happens? What would happen in real life? They get away. Some of them die, some of them retreat. The Terminators actually are roaming free in the world. And maybe they continue Skynet's mission, maybe they don't. Maybe they have that encoded in them, maybe they don't. Maybe they have all of Skynet's knowledge, maybe they don't. We don't need to know that, not yet. So the battle ends, and just like a real war, it's not that clean. Some of them die, and some of them run away, okay? And that's the end of the fight. So Sarah goes to the cemetery where her parents are buried. And she's never been there before. She's never seen her parents' tombstones before because she went on the run as soon as they died, which again is an idea from Terminator 3. And Pops is still with her. It's just her and Pops. And she says something to the effect of, Reese won't get a funeral. Nobody knows his name. He has no family, not even a body to bury. And then she turns around and she says to Pops, I know that you didn't have any choice. I know that you couldn't control yourself and that you were only a slave to Skynet's programming. And I don't care. You killed my mother. You lied to me for years. I can't trust you. And Pops at this point is free from his programming. He's free from his emotions. He has basically reached the next level of consciousness. So, again, he's still the Terminator. He's not going to have a big dramatic monologue here. But he says something to the effect of a Terminatory way of saying, if you would like me to go, I'll go. But my mission is still to protect you. And it's not a mission that Skynet gave him. It's not a mission that Sarah gave him. It's not a mission that John Connor gave him. It's a mission he has given himself. He has chosen to protect Sarah Connor. And he says, so I'll leave, but if you ever need me, I'll be back. And she says, goodbye, Pops. She takes off. And she goes and she sits on a park bench with Michelle Rodriguez, same park bench that Skynet was on earlier, watching these kids, and they're discussing the moral implications of what they've done and what they're going to do next, which is they're going to hunt some Terminators. They are part of the resistance now. The future war is now. That's the point. And it's a soft transition. You almost don't even realize that it's happened because the bombs didn't drop. That's the big thing. This time, the bombs are not going to drop. The future war has happened, but it looks like now. It looks like our world. So all of a sudden it's like, wait, are we there? Are we doing this now? And they are. The war has begun. It's the resistance versus the Terminators, and it's on. So Sarah and Michelle Rodriguez say goodbye to each other, and I don't know if I would do this, but if it works, I'll do it. If it's too cheesy, I'm not going to do it. But clouds are up ahead. Thunder's rolling. And Michelle Rodriguez says something to the effect of, better head home, Chica. There's a storm coming in. And I think where I can avoid the cheesiness is that Sarah does not say, I know, like the end of the first Terminator. It's not going to be that on the nose, but it's going to be a little wink to the fans. Again, another wink to bring this all full circle. And she says, better head home. There's a storm coming in. And Sarah looks to the horizon and she just kind of smirks. She's like, all right, here we go. And she hops onto her motorcycle. I have to set up earlier that she rides a motorcycle. Again, these setups would happen organically, but I'm kind of coming up with them as I go. So she gets onto a motorcycle, and it's not like a Harley Davidson, but it's also not like the little scooter she rode in the first one. Somewhere in between, say like a crotch rocket. She gets to wear like a racing helmet, and she hops on the motorcycle, and she spins out. You know that shot that they do in every Terminator movie where the motorcycle spins and the tire goes past the camera, and she does that, and she rides off into the storm. And that's it. That's the end of the movie. So that's my idea for Terminator 6, and it does open up the possibility of a Terminator 7, and the difference between Terminator 7 and Terminator Salvation is that it is the future war, but again, it looks like now, so it's not going to be this whole Mad Max ripoff or whatever they did, and you could have some interesting ideas coming up. Maybe the Terminators don't want to fight anymore. Maybe some of them do, maybe some of them don't. And I would make Miles Dyson a big part of that going forward if we ever did a Terminator 7. Again, it's fan fiction. This is never going to happen. But it's fun to pretend, isn't it? So I was kind of bummed that we're never going to find out the answers to those questions that they raised in Genisys. Genisys had a lot of open threads that they didn't tie up. So this is my attempt to bring it all together into, one, unify the continuity, but also to answer those questions and bring it to a reasonable conclusion. And it could end right here, honestly. Like, we know how this is all going to pan out. Sarah's going to fight the machines. Somebody's going to win. Somebody's going to lose. We don't need another movie, but we could have one. And we could bring Pops back. We could bring the Resistance back. We can bring back Miles Dyson. And we don't need Skynet anymore because Terminators are loose in this world. And they might be part of a hive mind, or they might be individuals. We don't know. So lots of options open for the sequel. So again, in this imaginary world that I've created, somebody else could take over the franchise and do whatever they want with it from that point. But the point was to take it from a very complex and convoluted place like Genisys and streamline it to this pretty gritty and dark sci-fi movie, but in the present day. So that's what I wanted to get back to. I wanted to make it intense, make it a chase movie, make it dangerous, and still have some fun with it. So, those are my ideas. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this. This is my longest episode of the Trevor Meyer Show to date. And so long, in fact, that I had time to get a haircut halfway through the video. The astute viewer will have noticed that. I hope it wasn't too distracting. If you like this story, if you like this pitch, you're probably going to like my novels, all right? Now, these novels are not published yet, so don't get too excited. But this YouTube video might be up for a few years. So 2 or 3 years from now, go ahead and look in the description below this video. And if I've actually stuck with it and I've actually committed, I will have links to my novels in this. And I'm writing them, so I know that they're similar to this. I mean, this is my style, so if you like my style, you'll like my books. So check out the description below, see if I've updated it yet. And if not, go ahead and support this channel by liking this video, sharing it with your friends, and subscribing. Thank you.